I went to Full Sail for 2 years from 2007 to 2009. From there, I went to Campus Crusade or Crew from 2011 from 2009 to 2011. And it ended up being a paid internship, which was even better. So I started doing that for the original internship was only going to last like maybe 2 months at the most. But still was in using my degree in the field that of expertise that I wanted to be in. So I started there, and Irv kind of pitched this vision for this ministry in Barcelona, Spain. They had this whole post-apocalyptic story, and they had a whole arsenal of tools to use it for ministry. And they wanted to be able to convert it from essentially like a comic book storytelling series to an animated web episodic adventure. So the project was called File Zero at the time, and I had the opportunity to do some early concept work with it that basically packaged up a pitch that went to the Jesus Film leadership, and they said, "Oh, we can do that." And basically, it was a positive affirmation of wanting to do the project, and they raised additional funding, and I ended up being there for 2 years with about a team of 5 to 10 people. And we made about 7 episodes of the 14 episode arc that the full File Zero was designed to have. And then they translated that into several major languages after it was completed. And I believe they're still using it today as a tool for sharing faith to cultures that gravitate towards that story. Once I finished at Jesus Film, that was September of 2011. I made some connections while I was there with a couple folks at the Electronic Arts studio in Orlando. And I saw that there were some open positions. I applied. The person that I knew sent my resume to one of the supervisors that was on the team at the time, and they brought me in. I interviewed, and within the following week, I received an offer to start as an associate technical artist on Madden Pipeline. So Madden is the EA Sports football video game that Electronic Arts produces. So from that point, I spent a year working as an associate pipeline technical artist, and the passion that I have, the focus that I did in college is called character rigging. So that's basically I build a skeleton and muscle systems that go into a 3-dimensional character and put controls on that 3-dimensional character and then pass it on to an animator, and they'll put the illusion of life into the character and create the animation data that you'll see either in a film or in a video game. When you push your buttons and the character does certain motions, it's triggering an animation that maps to the character. So I went with the NBA Live franchise basically until they shelved the console version of the product. They still make the mobile version. And that lasted from 2012 till about 2020. And through that whole time frame, I've been promoting up within the rigging department. And in 2020, I became a senior rigging technical artist within the rigging department. And then a couple months later, they asked if I could be a supervisor within that department. So I was the rigging supervisor since about the fall of 2020 until today. And more recently, I've accepted a position with Walt Disney Imagineering. So I'm going to be starting a new career with Walt Disney Imagineering starting next week. Really looking forward to that. And yeah, it's kind of been, God's really blessed the opportunity and used my skills to do great things, I feel. And I've just been along for the ride. So that's where we're at today. So within Walt Disney Imagineering, I'll be working with a team that builds animatronics for the theme parks, the cruise lines, the resorts. And they basically are relocating the Imagineers from California to Central Orlando, Central Florida, Orlando area. There's a brand new warehouse and office space that they're currently building for the Imagineers here. During this time frame, we're working on any projects that come through globally that are used at different parks. Now, as my Christian faith portrays through my life and impacts what I do, I mean, the Lord calls us to be salt and light. And the way I try to be salt and light is, one, as a Christian, I need to be producing spiritual fruit in what I'm doing: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So that's really just more or less me being a kind person and not a jerk when I'm just having normal conversation with folks. And even when I do my work, it's helpful to say please and thank you. It's just to be a considerate person is how I interpret that. So do those things glorify God? Yes, I would say so, because you're representing God. It's not all about individually, how can I get ahead with my own career, even if that means stepping on some toes and, going over and above a person. It may take a longer time for you to go from point A to point B in your career, but if you do it in a way that honors God, you have built a sturdy foundation on rock rather than a slippery foundation on sand, so to say. And that foundation comes to be with the people that support and come around you and say, Josh is a good leader because of X, Y, and Z. Or I can trust Josh because when he says he'll deliver X, Y, and Z, he does it. And sometimes he goes above and beyond what he says he'll do. So I'm like, the whole let your yes be yes and your no be no, it all kind of comes into how does your Christian faith permeate through what you do? And all of that stuff is interconnected. During my time at Electronic Arts, I often encounter people of different faith backgrounds, or people who, are agnostic and have no faith background. During that time frame, I've made friendships and relationships with all these people, because at the core of it, people are still people. And it's like, how do you treat a human like a human? Well, you be kind and considerate to one another. And really that goes a long way, because you're kind of removing the lens of how society or culture looks at a person, and you see the person for being a human. And, if I come from a biblical standpoint, I need to remember that humans, we all fall short of the glory of God. So we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to be, we're all going to have some sort of flaw. And I think we have to extend grace to people as much as reasonably as possible, if we're all going to get along and try to do something together. So during my time there, just working with folks, I haven't necessarily encountered any persecution per se. I mean, it's a professional place of business, and we try to operate like that as well. I have encountered I would say some offensive or outlandish statements that could be made towards one religious group or people group, but those are, opinions to a certain degree, and if it impacts the professional work environment, there's tools in place for us to report that up the ladder, because that's, not conducive to a healthy work environment. As I've made relationships with people that I've worked with over the 10 plus years, got to know their families, and gotten to know those coworkers more than just as, this person who does this work at the studio. There's been, many opportunities to pray for them and their families because of health issues or disabilities or accidents that have occurred. And just mentioning something to them showing your support, your love for them in a way that, not like, it's the difference between notifying people that something's going on and you need time off versus trying to take an active stance to really show them, hey, we miss having you around on the team. I've been praying for you and your family. How are things going? Do you need anything? Can I send you like a Uber Eats gift card or something, and you guys can grab some food tonight and just try and take a break from everything going on. So it's like those little things really kind of go the extra mile. And I think that kind of softens the soil of the heart for you to have opportunities to speak truth into their life. But again, it's got to be at their pace. It's like I can't go from one to Jesus died for you. And, if you say these things or pray this prayer, we can somehow become saved. And it's just like, if I go from 0 to that, that's too fast, too hard. And it takes a lot of incremental steps to build those relationships to get to that point. So as a creative person within my church community, we tend to kind of get consolidated down as to, oh, that guy does art, so he can paint and draw things. Or, oh, we know he does digital stuff, so he can do Photoshop things for us. So that tends to be like the interpretation sometimes of how the church community can perceive you, or like your family can perceive you, depending on their grasp of complexity around the career field that I'm in. So it's not bad, but then you get some more nuanced individuals who be like, oh, you're capable of using the Unreal Engine or using Unity. Oh, do you think you could show my son or show my daughter how to do blah 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 with this tool? Or can you just talk to them about what it's like to have a career in this industry? So you can open opportunity for individuals who are in, grade school and are looking at that. And sometimes it's like a burst the bubble moment, because I'm like, well, even though you like playing games, building games, developing games is a whole nother sphere. So it's like, I focus more on the math and physics and the science involved in making 3D graphics, and those 3D graphics play at an interactive timing so that you can press a button and the character does something in that game. Now, there's a designer who basically says, what are the mechanics of the game? And then there's software engineers who help design the math around those mechanics to trigger and the physics to work so that we can do simulation of cloth and things like that, and hair. My job is more or less pulling all those pieces into a character and making that character use all those different pieces to the best of its ability within the hardware limitation and the software limitation of the game engine. And some people are like, oh, that sounds like it's a lot of work. And it's just like, well, it's a lot of pieces that you have to be aware of and be able to manage and keep track of. But I find it gratifying to see like what is a believable character that I can create with other creative individuals and make it kind of give that illusion of life to what story needs to be told, or what game satisfaction can be given to the end user. And that's why sometimes there's just that realization that just because you work for a game company doesn't necessarily correlate to you're playing games all the time. It really correlates more to you're understanding the nuanced complexities and the building blocks that come together to make that game playable. Yeah, so from an early age, I knew I gravitated towards animation. At first it was 2D animation, and then eventually it evolved to 3D animation. And when I was in high school, I knew some friends who got me some bootleg copies of Autodesk Maya. At the time, it was Alias Maya. I had a copy of Photoshop. I was in a Photoshop class in school. I looked at it like Adobe Premiere Pro and Adobe After Effects, and I kind of assembled my own little blue screen stage at one point and created some fake lightsaber kind of things with dowel rods and filmed a clip. And then I just went through the full gamut of, well, I've seen the behind the scenes stuff on some of this thing, on some of these movies. And it's like, basically they had the blue screen and then they rotoscope everything out and then they superimpose it with other stuff and change lighting and add digital effects in. So I just basically in high school, because I had access to the software, I spent about 2 or 3 months just tinkering with things and trying it out. Today, you guys have a lot more access to free software like the Unreal Engine or Unity. Even Maya has like an indie license that's very cheap that you can use or try a free trial. There's Blender that's completely open source and free. That's similar to Maya. The tools are available today. They weren't necessarily as accessible when I was growing up. So what I'm getting at is if you have a passion for this stuff, there's really no excuse for you to not tinker and try it out. And if you really are passionate about making games or making digital art, there's free open source software that you can try and just understand it, wrap your head around it, start making mistakes, use Control-Z to undo, and figure out, how do I use this thing to create something awesome that I'm envisioning? And as soon as you understand how to navigate that, that is what creates the skill you need to be employable. Becoming faster at it or doing it to a higher level of fidelity in the content that you create, that comes with time and understanding your skill set and what you need to practice to enhance, but it also comes with the experience of making that stuff again and again. So for instance, like with Electronic Arts, I think I've shipped like 8 or 9 games or 10 games in the time frame that I've been with Electronic Arts. And each of those games that I've shipped, I've learned something year over year that I could apply to the next game. Or if an art director came to me and said, hey, we want to make this change to the player, what kind of impact does that create? Well, now I can give a time estimate on, well, we'll have to do this, and this thing to the player because there's some interconnected dependencies on how that's set up. And then we can actually make this new thing you want to do, add that in, roughly you're looking at like 2 to 6 weeks. And like, as you become more skilled, you understand how long it takes you to perform the work, which when you understand how you can perform the work and you can give an estimate at how long it takes you to perform it, or at least time box unknown stuff into like, hey, I'll spend a day investigating X to try and understand how it works. I'll report back to you guys. And once I understand it, we can give a more accurate time estimate to what it means for us to do this in production. So that's how you become employable, is you marry the skill set, the passion of the skill set, the understanding of the skill set with time and efficiency in order to be paid at a rate in which you can utilize that skill set towards a product that is for consumer. And like I said, the ability for you to do it well just comes down to what's called the 10,000 hours of practice. You got to put 10,000 hours of practice into whatever you want to master. And you'll have that gradient acceleration of growth along the way. And that's where you're building your career as you're traveling up that gradient arc to be a master in that craft. Whatever you're going to do, just make sure you enjoy doing it. And the one thing that like my dad would always tell me, if you whatever you do for work, if you enjoy it, you're not really working, you're having fun. So just obviously, even within the scope of having fun, there's some tasks that we don't want to do that are feel like work. Like you might have to fill out a spreadsheet or something occasionally. Um, but the idea is the vast majority of it is I enjoy what I do. It brings me fulfillment. It brings me the opportunity to have God work through the talent that He's blessed me with. And that is what you kind of want to find your calling is what it's known as. So it's like, where does my skill set, my passion, and the talents that the Lord has blessed me with intersect? And it's like that area in the center, that's your calling. So try to spend some time reflecting on that, praying about that, and make sure what you do is utilizing your calling, your gift that God has blessed you with to help not just our community flourish, but really the world flourish through you, through the blessing that God is giving to us through you.